The global spiritual head and Khalifa of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community called on both the media and politicians to play a more responsible role in international affairs during his keynote address at the National Peace Symposium on Saturday. Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, addressed an audience including senior government leaders, international politicians and diplomats, as well as hundreds of dignitaries and guests from around London at the Baitul Futuh Mosque. He began by comprehensively highlighting how Islam's holiest scripture, the Quran, entirely condemns the actions of extremist groups such as Daesh.
The founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community has also explained the true meaning of chapter 16, verse 91 of the Holy Quran, in which Allah the Almighty states, "Verily Allah enjoins justice and the doing of good to others and giving like kindred." The founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community states that in this verse, Muslims are commanded by Allah to be just and fair towards all others. Therefore, Muslims are commanded to be kind and to extend favor to all other people, including those who have not been sympathetic to them or favored them in any way. Finally, he explained that the verse required a Muslim to love God's creation to such an extent that they considered every person in the world to be like their own close family member. In the second verse of the very first chapter of the Holy Quran, it is stated that Allah the Almighty is the provider and sustainer of all the worlds. And the third verse states that He is gracious and ever merciful. Thus, when Allah the Almighty is the provider and sustainer of all the people and gracious and ever merciful, how could it be that He desired for those who believed in Him to mercilessly murder, violently oppose, or harm His creation in any way? Of course, the answer is that it is not possible. In terms of conflict between nations or groups, Allah the Almighty has given golden principle for the establishment of long-lasting peace in chapter 49, verse 10 of the Holy Quran. In the verse, it states that if there is a dispute between nations or groups, third parties should seek to mediate and to bring about a peaceful resolution to the conflict. In the event of an agreement, all parties should act equitably. But if either party contravenes the settlement and takes aggressive measures, then the other nations or groups should unite together and even use force, if necessary, to stop the aggressor. However, once the aggressive party withdraws and adopts peace, they should not be unduly restricted, but should be permitted to move forward as an independent nation and a free society.
His Holiness went on to criticize the international media's imbalanced coverage of Islam.
Over the years, I have made these points time and time again and have highlighted these core Islamic teachings. I have repeatedly quoted the Holy Quran to prove that what I am saying is based on Islam's authentic teachings. However, it remains that our peaceful and inclusive message is not covered extensively in the media. Whilst, on the other hand, those relatively few people involved in brutality and carnage are given non-stop worldwide media coverage and attention. There is no doubt that the media plays a huge role in influencing public opinion, and so the media should use this power responsibly, as a force for good and as a force for peace. It should show the world what true Islam represents, rather than focusing on the merciless acts of minority. Publicity is the oxygen sustaining most terrorist or extremist groups. And so I have no doubt that if the media takes on board what I have said, we will soon find that the terrorism and violence afflicting the world will begin to die away. The media, which gladly focuses on the tiny minority involved in brutality, are feeding the propaganda machines of evil groups such as Daesh, yet they fail in their duty to highlight all that is good in the world. This is an injustice that is sowing the seeds of further division and conflict.
The Khalifa asserted that the world stood on the brink of a catastrophic world war in which nuclear weapons may be utilized to devastating effect. He condemned the practice of regime change, highlighting how previous instances in Iraq and Libya had terrible consequences for the peace and stability of those countries. He stated only peaceful negotiations involving all parties, including the West, Russia and Iran, could resolve crises such as those found in Syria, and called for countries in the region to sanction Daesh and stop buying oil from the terrorist group.
For many years, I have warned that the world is moving rapidly towards another world war, and now others are reaching the same conclusion. In fact, some prominent people are now saying that they believe that a world war has already begun. Nonetheless, I believe that we still have the time to stop such a war in its tracks. But the solution remains, as I have already said, to act with justice and to leave aside all vested interests. On a number of previous occasions, I have spoken about the critical importance of cutting the funding and supply lines of extremist groups. Yet, it cannot be said that full efforts are being made in this regard. For example, a recent special investigative report published by the Wall Street Journal stated that Daesh was acquiring huge quantities of US dollars from auction being held by Iraq's central bank. Those same dollars were being provided to Iraq directly from the Federal Reserve in the United States. The article stated that the US government had known about this since at least June 2015, but personally, I believe that the world powers knew about such trading for much longer. Professor John Gray, a retired political philosopher who taught for many years at the London School of Economics, recently wrote about the importance of prioritizing peace over the type of political system in place. He wrote, "The form of government, democratic, despotic, monarchical, or republican, is less important than the capacity to deliver peace." In my opinion, this was an extremely insightful comment. Yet, the world's major powers have continued to prioritize regime change in countries that were previously relatively stable. For example, the West was determined to remove Saddam from Iraq, and the painful consequences of that war 13 years ago continue to be felt to this day. Another prominent example is Libya, whereby President Gaddafi was forcibly removed from office in 2011, and ever since, Libya has spiraled into a state of lawlessness and unbridled chaos. A direct consequence of the political vacuum in Libya has been that the fact that Daesh has now built a significant base and terror network in the country, which it is continuing to strengthen.
During the event, His Holiness also presented Ms. Hadil Hussain with the Ahmadiyya Muslim Prize for the Advancement of Peace, in recognition of her outstanding efforts to alleviate the suffering of thousands of refugee children stranded in the Middle East. Other guests at the event included former Attorney General Dominic Grieve, UK Secretary of State for International Development Justine Greening, London mayoral candidate Zach Goldsmith, Lord Tariq Ahmed, Minister for Countering Extremism, and other members of Parliament, such as Siobhan MacDonald, Paul Scully and Jane Ellison.
I'm so proud that the Borough of Merton is the UK and worldwide headquarters of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, which makes an incredible contribution to the richness and diversity of our community. It is a community that contributes greatly to this country, and your belief in peace and religious tolerance is an example to us all, as you would expect from a community whose motto is love for all, hatred for none.
For over a century, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community has taken a stand against hatred, but you have faced it down with compassion and with love and with practical help to bring communities together. Every day you put those values into practice, from the young Ahmadi Muslims who every autumn go on the streets of London and sell poppies for the Royal British Legion, to Lord Ahmed, my very good friend here, who serves this country as a Minister of the Crown, working day in, day out at the Home Office.
There can be no better example than that exemplified by the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, and indeed that under the divine and inspirational leadership of His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, who not just confront and counter extremism, not just by words but by actions, not just domestically but internationally, a living, walking example of how a Muslim community, a true Muslim community guided by God, with a Khalifa at the helm, a Khalifa guided by God, the Khalifa of Islam, who inspires not just his own community but people around the world.
We wouldn't be able to do the work that we do without UK charities like Save the Children, like Mary's Meals, and so many others. But one of those, of course, is Humanity First. And another one, of course, is the Ahmadiyya Muslim Youth Association. And both of these elements of the community play their own important role in helping to rise to the challenge that these massive numbers of people who need so much support to stay alive provoke for the entire world. So I just want to say how proud I am to be able to play a role in representing the community as a local MP, but also to say that in my broader role within government, it's a privilege to be able to work alongside Humanity First and to see the fantastic fundraising that the Youth Association does to enable Humanity First to do so much work.
The event was also attended by members of the European Parliament, academics from around Europe, international diplomats, interfaith groups, and prominent local dignitaries and organisations. Nimra Butt, MTA News.